else is working.
Hello. I believe we're live on Facebook. I'm going to give everyone just a second to join us. Okay, I'm seeing people trickling in, and make sure everyone can give us the thumbs up that you can hear us clearly and see us clearly, and then we'll get started.
Hi, Dana.
Hi, Dr. Jones. How are you?
I'm doing great.
All right, let's go ahead and get started. Andrew, we got the go ahead. Everything's good to go? Okay. So obviously, if you've joined us on this feed, you know Dr. Debbie Jones is the superintendent of Bentonville Schools, and it's an interesting time to be superintendent of Bentonville Schools. Am I correct?
Far too interesting right now. Yes.
Okay, so we wanted to touch base with you today, and you've been really gracious to give us a good amount of your time today to just answer parent questions. There's a lot of questions out there. We've asked parents to submit questions through DWTN, our storytelling media initiative for downtown Bentonville. We've gotten probably 100 questions. We're going to get through as many as we can today with the understanding we're all navigating this together. So with that being said, Dr. Jones, let's just go ahead and dive into where we are right now. Let's talk a little bit about the task force that's kind of navigating us through these waters.
Okay, first, let me tell parents that I completely understand the anxiety, the concern, and just the overall concerns for well-being, everyone right now. We have to give ourselves a little bit of grace in taking care of ourselves and taking care of our children. And so I understand your children are your most valuable resource, so the decisions we make in the district directly impact your families, and we're well aware of that. This is a difficult time, and we're trying to provide information to families as quickly as we can, and I'll tell you some of those, the quick ways to get information. Let's talk a little bit about the task force, and people need to understand the process that all districts must follow. First of all, the governor issued an emergency order, and that order with the rules, the guidance, dictates what school districts must do. It's not optional. It is specified within the order itself that K through 12 schools must follow DESE. It's the Department of Education, and it's actually the department, the Division of Elementary and Secondary Education, but what we know is the Department of Education, and must follow the Department of Health's guidance and orders, and so not optional. Right below the governor's emergency order, we have this document. I'll show you. It's online at DESE's website. You see it tabbed, dog-eared everywhere. It's the Arkansas Ready for Learning document, and it has a lot of guidance within that document itself on multiple areas, and that is the Department of Education's guidance that we also must follow. And so then we have the Bentonville Task Force. We put together that task force because we wanted feedback, number one, from local medical doctors that were current with the situations we have in our area in Bentonville. We wanted mental health providers, and I want all the families to be aware that on our webpage, the people that we have representing this effort, we have Steve Goss, who's the president of Mercy. We have Dr. Lisa Lowe, and Steve, of course, was an MD as well. Beth Tellez, who is she's with Creative Counseling Services of Northwest Arkansas. Matt Talaferro, who is the CEO of the Boys and Girls Club. Deb Keith, who's over all of our nurses in the district. Cindy Marsiglio, who's a senior VP with Walmart. And she's also very informed and on the front line of facilities for Walmart in this whole pandemic. Tatum Ackland, she's a parent, and she's on the PTO at Evening Star. Chief John Simpson, Steve Vera, and he's our Director of Safety and Security. Melissa Ralston, who's over our food services within the district. Don Hoover, Principal at Lincoln. Thomas Ross, Director of Technology. Technology has been critical during this whole process. And then we have 3 additional teachers that we have added to the task force, and they will be joining us on Friday. And they represent high school, middle, and elementary levels as well.
Okay. So that's the task force, and you've been information gathering, and we do want to encourage people to go to the Bentonville Schools website, because there's a lot of information that you all are updating from the task force, as well as answering questions from parents online as well.
Yes, I can say that we have had ongoing conversations, two-way communication since March. If you go to our website, it's really critical that you read the materials there, because parents have the opportunity to ask questions. In fact, we have 599 questions currently. As soon as I check now, it's probably 650. But we read those questions every day, and we update our fact sheet. So if you go to the Bentonville K12.org site and you look under Reopening Task Force, you'll see you have the task force members, all that information. I want to point out virtual school at a glance. It's detailed information about what virtual school will look like. Many of your questions will be answered in that. The facilities procedures has significant detailed information, more than you have time to cover here today. The frequently asked questions directly answers questions that parents are having. And then that questions or concern, that's how we get the questions from families. Now, I'm getting hundreds of emails, and I will tell you, it's slower to answer those questions email by email. Go to your fact sheet and look for the information that's there.
To make it easy, I'll share those links at the bottom of this interview at the end so that everyone can get directly there. And I want to bring up, you talk about the virtual learning and the blended learning, and that's a big decision parents are about to make. And right now, I think a lot of them, from what I see on Facebook, they're information gathering, and they're trying to figure out what that looks like. And we need to be cognizant that that decision could be different depending on every family. So what's good for one may not be good for another. So let's just kind of cover what those 2 options look like and when that decision needs to be made.
Okay, breaking news. We listen to parents, and it's very difficult for them to make a decision at all like this. But it's also difficult to make it in July. We have added every last day we can add to get a decision. And so they will be making a decision by July 8th. We moved it ahead. We asked July 1, but that's the absolute last day that we can get all of our work done and get the personnel assigned where they need to be and design bus routes. So July 8th is the last day. I will be sending out an email with a link where a parent makes a selection. Blended. Blended is what you think of traditional school. It's back in the school buildings. We will have multiple procedures in place, and you can read many of those on that facilities website. We strongly, strongly, strongly recommend that students come prepared with face masks. There will be times that physical distancing is just not possible, especially when you start looking at passage in the halls. When you look at, classroom situations, we're going to separate the desks as much as we can. But there will be times that they can't have the social distance recommended.
Also, and they're kids.
What?
Also, they're kids. So
they're kids.
They want to hug each other.
Adults, we have a hard time training ourselves to keep the distance. And so I can't tell you how critical that is to start putting masks on your kids, start taking them out to the store. I see families with little kids doing this all the time, and they adjust. I find that the paper mask rather than the cloth mask are easier to breathe. I've made adjustments. I hate them too, but I care about my health. I care about others, and I think it's our responsibility to make healthy choices. If we can just make it for a year, and it may not be a year, But if we can make it for a year and be healthy, we'll be better off. We'll learn to wash our hands more. But so blended learning back at school. Virtual learning is at home. You don't report to school. You already will have your Chromebook. You'll be set up. It's a little different than the spring in the fact that the spring we just covered essential standards, and we need to do a comprehensive curriculum. This fall, we cannot afford for kids to get behind, and so they can expect about 4 hours online covering a comprehensive curriculum. More details on that link about virtual school. We do have to ask parents to make a selection for a semester because we can't reschedule and have seats available. A big question parents will ask about is, okay, so I'm at Willowbrook, and if I stay home for virtual school, do I lose my seat for the following year? I'm going to keep my child out for a year. Okay, your child does not lose standing because of virtual school. Okay, does that mean they'll never be overflowed? No, because I know right now we have far more kindergartners wanting to enroll in Willowbrook than we have seats available. And this year as kindergarten, we'll probably have enough to put virtual at home, keep them in Willowbrook. But when they return as first graders, it still will be over. So the safest, the clearest way to say this is selecting virtual will not make you lose your standing or put you behind in your school.
And now there's the instance that you do have to shut down schools. There's also, if I'm correct, crisis. Can you kind of explain that? And that's a little different than virtual?
Correct. We call it blended coming back to school because at any minute we realize we may have an outbreak. We may have a positive case. We may have to send a school home. And I think that it would be more like that. Should we have positive cases? It may be a class. We don't know what that will be yet until the Department of Health issues us guidance. Okay. And so if, for example, the governor says we're shutting down Northwest Arkansas schools, everybody's going virtual, that's crisis. So all of those blended kids are ready to learn in crisis learning. Virtual are unaffected because they've been home the whole time anyway. So we have blended, we have virtual, and crisis is when everyone is home.
Okay. Now you kind of touched on this as well. This is our most popular parent question that was submitted, and that is, what is the trigger that moves us all from blended to shut down? And I know that you have to get a lot of advice from the CDC or the Arkansas Health Department, but do you have an understanding of, is it the child testing positive? Is it a staff member? Is it a parent or a family member of the child? What is that degree of separation from someone in the school?
We do not have that guidance. We have those specific questions submitted to the Department of Health right now. I expect before school returns, maybe soon, they will issue answers to those questions. But right now our procedure is this, and we practiced this back in March. When we hear of a positive case, staff member or student, we call the Department of Health. Okay. The Department of Health is then under control of the situation. They speak directly with the family and they begin the tracing. The Department of Health has done the tracing with that family. Now, I don't know how scenarios will change. We don't know if they will require us to close a class, to close a school. And those are the very questions that we have asked the Department of Health. Those aren't left up to us. We don't have an option to answer those or create a plan for those.
Sure, that makes total sense. I'm going to skip around just a little bit on here. So we have questions from parents concerning masks, concerning student health, and classroom questions as well. So I want to just touch on the mask questions. And I'm going to ask you a few of them and let you answer all of them at once, basically. Face shields. A lot of parents have asked For students that may have sensory issues or that may not be able to keep that mask on, are face shields an option?
According to the guidance, well, first of all, they're just recommended at this point, not just recommended. By DESE, by the governor, strongly recommended. And so that's an option for parents. I will give you this piece of information. I asked the Dr. Goss and other doctors actually about the face shields. They're not as safe. They're better than nothing, but they're not as safe as one that fits the face.
Sure, that makes total sense as well. So we had kind of had some questions about the rollback, because initially there was a understanding that masks were mandatory, and then a kind of an adjustment into that they were, strongly encouraged, as you were saying. Can you kind of tell me about that adjustment and where that directive came from?
Yes, I referred to this. It's on the DESE website, and it has been updated now, and it was required, and that wording was changed to strongly recommended. So it was an intentional change. I agree. Students and staff should be wearing face masks. And I strongly encourage anyone listening it's the safest thing for your child. And it's the safest thing for our teachers and the people around us. Our bus drivers will be wearing masks. And honestly, that's for their own protection, because they're going to encounter so many people in an enclosed space. We will strongly encourage the rest of our staff to wear masks. But the guidance at this point, which we're required to follow, is it's strongly recommended. Now, it's changed once. Might it change back? That's a possibility, especially with the cases that we see growing in Northwest Arkansas. If anywhere needs to be wearing face masks, I think that in Northwest Arkansas, we need to be.
All right. Carrie has this question. If a child stays home because of a fever, will they have to quarantine at home for 2 weeks before returning to school? And I'm looking at a question that really complements that here, that if they have to stay home, we're assuming they can do virtual learning at that point if they were a blended student.
I'm not going to give a black and white answer for this. Yeah. This is what I'll give. You'll be on the phone with the nurse, and the nurse will ask you a lot more information, because kids get fever and they get sick sometimes that has nothing to do with COVID. And so they'll go through that succession of questions. And who knows where testing will be, if that will be required at some point for things like that. But they will work that out with the nurse. And it's not an automatic quarantine because you have a fever. But if your child has a fever the next day, above 100.4, you won't bring them that day either. According to the guidance, there is the screener that parents administer at home, which involves taking their temperature every morning and not sending them to school if they exceed that temperature. And that's all also on the website.
Sure. Linda wanted to know, and she says this is hard for all parents. Will the children be able to have masks off in the classroom? What do you anticipate time throughout the day the students will be wearing masks? And that includes recess, PE, lunch. A lot of the parents want to have a really good understanding of what that blended day looks like for their child if they choose to go that direction.
It is not realistic to ask students or adults to wear face masks all day. It's not possible. I don't think there are health dangers, as some of you have heard. But when they can properly distance in the classroom, they'll be able to remove those. When they eat, they're going to remove those. When they're outside on the playground, we're going to encourage them to stay distanced apart. They don't wear them on the playground. They don't wear them in PE on activity or any activity. In music, we have worked out the electives and the way that they're going to do that. If they're safely distanced apart, they won't be wearing the face mask. And so when they're passing in the hall, they need to be wearing their face mask, especially if they're going to pass other people. So it's going to be a combination, but it's a reasonable thing. And just think as parents, think of what's reasonable to you. That's what our teachers will employ. So what's our guidance specifically to them? It's when you can't maintain distance, have them wear their face mask.
Sure. I'm going to shift to a question from Tiffany. What does a virtual school day look like for those that are in special ed?
That depends on the IEP, because a special ed IEP is so unique for every student. And so you will have the same services that the student at school, that student would get at school, just in a different medium. Your minutes will still be served. If you read carefully the virtual school at a glance, not all kids are well suited for virtual school. And this is advice. If kids get extra services, they will meet the requirements of an IEP. It's not as good. And I think many parents learn that face-to-face instruction is still the best instruction kids can get. Some people flourish on virtual, and they can do well. The majority of people, especially those that get extra services, extra intervention, extra dyslexia, those types of services, they're best served in face-to-face.
All right, we have a few more questions here. Several questions about if there's a punishment mechanism that the school would have for any student that's not following guidelines. And, I assume that could mean, I don't know what this specific question's asking, but could that be purposely coughing on someone? Could that be not wearing a mask? Are there guidelines for that kind of?
For guidelines, no. And at this point, while the emergency order's in place, we wouldn't be permitted to do that because they're only recommended.
Sure.
We have training set up for all staff. We'll have training that we will teach all students, and that will be in the classroom, from hand washing to putting your face mask on, donning and doffing your face mask, we put several together over the last few weeks. It's the symptoms, what to watch for, and sanitizing protocol. And so we'll teach those lessons. And is there always some punishment for something? We could always create that, but that's not the goal. The goal is to educate kids about the dangers.
This question, will there be an orientation for virtual learners and their parents?
Yes, that's one thing. Thank you to the parents that answered the survey. At the end of our digital learning, we had wonderful response on the parent survey, because we wanted to study the parent response to see how we could improve this year's virtual school. And we have, based upon their response. And so one thing parents clearly told us is they were confused about how to get around on the software. So we have created for every level, for every parent, and that's that's both virtual and blended, because we never know if blended are going to have to go into crisis learning. So that is the part of orientation. Now it's going to be virtual, because we're not going to have open houses, but you'll have virtual teaching on how to use the format that we're using for the students.
I'm going to ask one more question here, and it was about food allergies. If a child has a food allergy, how will that risk be mitigated with eating in a classroom setting?
I wanted a formal doctor response on that, and so that's why it's taken me a little while to answer that fact sheet. But we have our answer, and it will be posted actually today. I've sent it on. Basically, there are two specific divisions, but one, they will always have a reserved table in the cafeteria for one specific case, and then they will have reserved table in the classroom. So watch the fact sheet for the detail on that. There are different types of allergies that they're talking about in that guidance.
Okay, and then I had two comments, and I just want to throw them in here. Michael said he can't imagine how difficult it is to try and navigate all this. And just wanted to pass along his gratitude to you and your team for trying to educate our kids, all the while keep them safe. And another comment thanking you and the amazing educators in Bentonville for working to navigate this challenge. We're so grateful to be in the district and know their commitment to our children is unsurpassed. So I thought on, final note, just to give you a little boost for the day as you navigate.
Was that Michael Palladino?
It was.
He rocked. He's awesome.
He does. If you're watching, Michael, hello. And I did want to I know you've pitched this many times. I'll put the link to the Bentonville Schools question and answer page because it really does answer all of these questions and so much more than we could ask throughout the day. So we'll give you that link as well. And we'll also put this interview on Facebook, Instagram, and the DWTN media website. I'll link to that as well so that you can watch this and share this and give this information to others as they need it. Did I miss anything, Dr. Jones? Thank you so much.
No, but I want to alert parents if they're not getting my emails, and it's about once a week now. If you look on our website again and you look under COVID, and you can see all the superintendent's communication, and lots of important information comes out every week to give parents all the information they need in order to make a decision.
All right. Well, thank you. Yes, we'll put all of those links. Because if you take some time and sift through that website, you're going to feel like you're pretty up to speed on what's going on, and you guys will update it as well as we kind of go towards July 8th. And you said July 8th will be the day that decision needs to be made.
Yes, and they'll be getting communication from me, so they don't have to look for links.
Mm-hmm. Great.
Okay.
Well, thank you, Dr. Jones. I hope you answered questions, and hopefully we can do this again soon and answer more questions.
We'd love to.
All right. Stay safe, everyone, and thank you.
Thank you. All right.